Welcome back, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us once again. We've been really excited to see all the work that you've been submitting to us and all the questions that you've been asking as well. My friend Brianna has been really enjoying these modules and took a lot of time working on her paw print sketches and asking some questions of us, just like the rest of you. We really enjoy seeing all the work that you have been doing by accepting our challenges. We'd love it if you would continue with the challenges and submitting your work for us to share. This week, we've all gathered together to answer some of your questions that you submitted about the tracking modules.
A lot of you had questions about the raccoons, and one of the questions had to do with their hands or their paws looking like a human hand, and why or what advantage would having a hand shape like that have for a raccoon. And so immediately I can think of some things that a hand like this might allow a raccoon to be able to do, such as climbing trees or grasping its food and prey, and maybe opening up your garbage can out on the curb so that it can get some food. And you could think of any creature out there and some of the special adaptations or features that they have, and if those features allow them to be successful at surviving and reproducing, those traits are often passed on to the babies and the next generations as they continue on.
Many of you had questions about the hoppers too. We've got some fresh snow on the ground, and I haven't noticed any tracks from mice or creatures on the surface today. But one of the questions was, how do those mice get back down into that subnivean world? And I stopped here to show you an example of one place that serves as an entrance to the subnivean world. And that's any place you find a down log like this. Because the snow falling, as you can see, it gathers on top of it and leaves an open space down below. So a mouse that was walking along here could dive underneath that log and get back into that world. There's generally an entrance there. Other places that melt out are at the bases of trees, and they actively keep some tunnels open just for air vents and entrances to their homes too. One question that made me think was, are all hoppers rodents, and are all rodents hoppers? And I use the term rodents. Rodents actually include animals like the beaver and the porcupine and the mice, the rats, and all of these the creatures that we talked about. They are not all hoppers. And some of the hoppers that we looked at, the snowshoe hare, is not a rodent.
After meeting my cat Chico, you had some questions about the wild cats here in Ontario. We did talk a little bit about the lynx last time, and you were curious about its big paws and why it had big paws. Those big hairy paws act as snowshoes, which allow them to stay up high on the snow, which is a lot better for moving around in deep snow and for hunting. We didn't talk too much about the bobcat. The bobcat has a much more varied range in Ontario because it also eats many different things. The bobcat has smaller paws. It doesn't operate really as well in deep snow, and it's actually a smaller cat. It has a smaller body. Its ears have tufts on them, but they're not as long as the lynx. And the bobcat got its name from its tail. So if you know a bob haircut, which is a short haircut, that is similar to the tail of the bobcat. The bobcat has a small tail that's white on the tip and has a black ring around it. If you would like to learn more about the differences between the lynx and the bobcat, there's a great article called The Ghost of the North, and it's published by Ontario Nature Magazine. You can look that up online, and we can link it below so that you can learn more about our two wildcats here in Ontario.
Many of you had some really curious questions about the white-tailed deer. So white-tailed deer are prey, meaning they are eaten by other animals. Even though white-tailed deer are quite big themselves, they still have to be on the lookout for their predators that may want to have them for lunch. Some ways that they do stay safe and on the lookout is by using their senses, so their eyesight and their hearing, and they travel in groups to stay safe together. When they travel in groups, you'll remember I mentioned the herd path. That is the path where all the deer will travel along, and it may lead them to sources of food or to their deer yard. And over here is an area, we have evergreen trees, and they are the ones with the needles, and they stay green all winter long, and they provide sort of like an umbrella in the forest so that snow doesn't get underneath them. And it means that there's no deep snow underneath those evergreen trees, and the deer can have a nice area to bed down. They don't have to go through the deep, thick snow. Another animal that we haven't really discussed much in our tracking series is the beaver. We've seen a lot of evidence of the North American beaver in the fall, but they don't come out very much in the wintertime. In the fall and summer, they chewed down so many trees around this area, and these are just 2 examples of the stumps that were left behind. And they proceeded to chew off the top branches and even the whole tree trunks and drag them into the water, where they have them cached just in front of their lodge. In the wintertime, they visit that cache for their food source, so they don't have to come out from their lodge or under the ice very often. The lodge of the family of beavers that we've been watching is just behind me in the man-made lake here.
Another animal that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet that's quite common here at the Bill Mason Center is the porcupine. In fact, there's actually one up in the tree just to the side of me here, and we often find them spending time in this little hut all winter long, especially on some of the coldest days of winter. Let's take a closer look at what's inside. Woo! As I get closer today, it is quite strong smelling, not overly pleasant, and the smell of porcupine scat, which is what we have here, can sometimes be a clue to let you know that a porcupine might be in the area. This wasn't built for porcupines, but porcupines took over this space. It's a great space for them to spend in the wintertime to keep them warm, and they usually poop in their den, whether it be a tree cavity, so a natural den, or this one here. The scat just keeps piling up. This will happen in any of their other natural den sites as well, and the scat will build up and up and up until the porcupines can no longer fit inside of their den.
I'm glad that Lindsay introduced us to a little bit of porcupine poop there. Although out here we prefer to refer to it as scat, S-C-A-T. And animal scat is another one of the clues that you can look for to figure out who's in your neighborhood, what other creatures are out sharing your environment with you, along with animal signs. So when they've been feeding on something or moving through an area and interacting with it in any way, other than just leaving their tracks. Now, I want to share this photo with you. This was sent in by Mr. Perks from Regina Street Public School, and he's been able to get out with his class lately and do some tracking at the Mud Lake area. But you can see this isn't a track, this is an example of scat. And if we look at scat of some of the common mammals that we've been tracking so far, you'll see there's some real distinct features. Take a look at a fox or a coyote scat, right? But you can see the ends are a little bit tapered right there, so it's a bit different. Or if we switch to an animal like a deer, where it's a little pellets, usually in a pile like this, or the snowshoe hare like we saw before, where you get those individual, drier, a little bit rounder pellets. So when you're out exploring, don't just focus on the tracks, look at everything that's happening around you, all those signs of feeding, all the scat that's out there. Put those pieces together, all of those clues, and it will give you a better idea of the big picture of what's happening around you.
At the end of last video, we left you with some mystery tracks. Many of you have figured out that those tracks belong to birds. Next video, we're going to spend the whole video diving into winter birding and what types of birds are common here in the Ottawa area and that you can see out and around your neighborhoods in the winter. Thank you very much for joining us and for sending us your questions, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video.